So you mentioned earlier that you'd worked with Jimmy Page and Robert Plant. Mm-hmm. What was it like? I mean, Led Zeppelin, I mean, for kids today, a lot of people don't know who Led Zeppelin is, for example, or may not be familiar with them. But I mean, for most of our lives, Led Zeppelin was, the biggest band in the world. I mean, they were real pioneers in that sort of hard rock genre. Like they really invented a lot of the things that bands, like right up to Soundgarden, for example. Chris Cornell was often compared to Robert Plant. What was it like working with a legendary band like that? Like, how were they?
Well, with Plant and Page, I just did live stuff with those guys. But I did the Coverdale Page record, so that was Jimmy and David Coverdale together, which was a different dynamic as well. But Plant is pretty cool. Like, he's like quite a friendly old statesman kind of thing, Definitely some great vibe to him and whatnot. Jimmy, for me, initially was very intimidating because here's, my idol from when I was 10 or 11 or however old I was when I discovered them. And then now I'm working with them and co-producing with them. So to sit in a studio and say, yeah, Jimmy, that wasn't good enough. Can you play that again? Like, it's really intimidating until you built that level of trust together. Like, how do you tell your idol? It's like, no, I'll do that. It wasn't, no.
It's not going to cut it.
It's like weird. Yeah.
Wow.
It worked out good.
I know a lot of the times you're probably, showing tricks to a lot of, I shouldn't use the term tricks, but you're showing various techniques and methods and, recording and miking and doing things. Does it ever work the other way around where you're actually learning from the people that you're recording with, that they might have, some methods and techniques that they do use for different things where you go, hey, that's a really good idea. I think I could use that again somewhere else, or...
Well, to be honest, all my techniques and tricks and all that, I've learned off everybody else. So, yes, everybody I work with, you're always constantly learning. And, Jimmy was another great example. We had gone down, we recorded the record, all the drums and everything here in Vancouver. Then we went down to Miami for 9 months to do the vocals and guitar overdubs.
Whoa.
Because they wanted to take weekends off and we only worked maybe 3 hours a day. Because they lived in Miami, right? So he'd go in. So I remember one day we had spent just doing acoustic guitars in this one song all day. Got a whole bunch of tracks together, played acoustics. 5, 6 o'clock at night, Jimmy said, okay, well, let's call it a day. Let's, come back tomorrow and listen. So he took off and I'm like, okay, well, I'll just sort through these guitars and tidy them up. And it was before Pro Tools, but you could fly things off onto a piece of tape and then fly it back in and sort of line things up. So I spent a couple hours doing that and tidying some of them up, and everything's all playing together now and sounded pretty good. I'm like, okay, cool. So we went home, came in the next morning. Jimmy goes, okay. He says, let's listen to what we did last night. So okay, threw it up. He's listening and he's frowning and looking at me. He goes, what happened to the acoustic guitars? And I said, I just flew them around and tidied them up a little bit. And then he says, well, put them back. That's how I wanted it. So I learned that vibe isn't always played in time and in tune and everything. There's a vibe. And, Jimmy is kind of known as a bit of a sloppy player, but he's slopping that on purpose. It's not because he can't play. He's put in the vibe he wanted. So fortunately, I could undo everything I did and put it back to what it was. So that was a huge lesson for me. Like, use your vibe ears and not your listen ears. And I think some of the problems with today's music is doing it in the computer is people listen with their eyes now and they look and say, oh, that's not lined up. Oh, that's listen with your vibe ears, And
like try to get back to basics, right?
Capturing magic. You cannot create magic. You can only capture it.